Imagine living in a quiet little town where nothing ever really happens. A place where neighbors know each other, children play outside until sunset, and the loudest sound at night is the crickets in the grass. Now imagine that same town, suddenly, filled with whispers, fear, and the chilling thought that something unnatural is hiding by the lake. This is the story of what happened in the town of Daggerlin, Ohio. And I promise you, by the end, you'll question whether it was ever safe to step near water again. But before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. I'd love to know if you would have been brave enough to stay in Daggerlin once the truth started to come out. It all began with a girl named Samantha Granger. She was only 8 years old. Everyone in town knew Samantha. She was bright, curious, and loved to explore. Her laughter carried across the schoolyard, and her favorite place to play was the wooded path that led to Lake Dagger, a dark stretch of water at the edge of town. Parents always warned their children not to wander too close to the lake, but you know how kids are. Rules sometimes feel like dares. On the afternoon Samantha disappeared, she told her mother she was going to ride her bike down to the creek that fed into the lake. She promised she'd be back before dinner. But dinner came and went. Her bike never returned, and neither did she. When the alarm was raised, Sheriff George Lost organized a search. George had been the sheriff of Daggerlin for nearly 20 years, and he had seen it all. Runaways, missing pets, bar fights, even the occasional tragic accident. But there was something different about this case. Something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The search party spread out, flashlights in hand, calling Samantha's name into the night air. The woods swallowed their voices, giving nothing back but echoes. Then, down by the lake, the sheriff found something. Strange. Footprints. Small ones, bare feet pressing into the muddy ground. They followed a trail along the shore, closer and closer to the water's edge. And then, nothing. The prints simply stopped, as if Samantha had vanished into thin air. The only other clue was a scarf tangled in the reeds, half wet, its bright color almost glowing against the dark water. It was Samantha's favorite scarf. The sheriff crouched there for a long time, staring at the lake. The moon was high, and the water looked like a sheet of black glass. The night was calm, too calm. No ripples, no frogs croaking, no insects buzzing. It was as if the lake was holding its breath. Days passed. The town changed. People locked their doors earlier. Parents kept children inside. Daggerlin was small, and when one person went missing, everyone felt the loss. Rumors started. Some said Samantha must have drowned, though her body never washed up. Others whispered about old stories, about the lake being cursed. No one wanted to believe it, but deep down they all felt the same unease. Then it happened again. Josh Maddox, a boy about Samantha's age, went missing while playing near the lake. His parents went into a panic, fearing the worst. The sheriff gathered his men and rushed to the water, but this time things were different, because Josh came back. The boy was found hours later, shivering, soaking wet, but alive. Everyone wanted to know what happened, what he saw. At first, Josh refused to speak. He just sat there, eyes wide, staring into nothing. But eventually, with his mother holding him close, he whispered a story that chilled the entire town to its bones. Josh said he saw something come out of the lake. It was tall, taller than any person he'd ever seen. Its arms were long, ending in claws that glinted even in the dark. And worst of all, it smiled at him. A wide, unnatural smile that didn't belong on anything human. Josh said it whispered his name, slowly, as if it had been waiting for him all along. The boy tried to run, but the creature was fast. It chased him through the trees, its claws tearing into the bark as it reached for him. Somehow Josh managed to escape. He didn't remember how. He just remembered running, his heart pounding, until suddenly the sheriff's men found him. Now the town was no longer whispering. They were shouting. They wanted answers. They wanted to know what was living in Lake Dagger. Sheriff Lost called. A meeting. He stood in front of the townspeople, his voice steady, though his eyes betrayed the fear he tried to hide. He told them there would be a curfew. Children must not leave their homes after dark. No one should go near the lake. And he promised that he would protect Daggerlin, whatever it took. But as he looked out over the crowd, he wondered if he had just made a promise he could never keep. Because the lake was watching. And it was hungry. From that night on, Sheriff Lost doubled his patrols. He drove slowly through the empty streets, his headlights cutting through the fog. He passed houses where curtains twitched and eyes peered out, families too afraid to sleep. He knew they were counting on him. But deep down, he felt powerless, because how do you fight something you can't even understand? One night, while parked near the edge of the lake, George turned off his engine and listened. The silence pressed down on him like a weight. Then he heard it. A splash. Not the small splash of a fish, but something heavier. He aimed his flashlight across the water. For a moment he swore he saw a shape. Long arms rising, something pale moving just beneath the surface. But when the light hit it, the water was still again. He rubbed his eyes. Was he imagining it? Or was the lake taunting him? Meanwhile, Samantha's mother began to dream. At first she thought they were just nightmares, but they felt too real. In her dreams she stood on the shore of Lake Dagger, calling her daughter's name. And from the water, Samantha's voice called back. Sometimes it sounded desperate, pleading. Other times it sounded wrong, twisted, like someone was trying to imitate her child. She woke up crying, swearing she heard her daughter's laughter echoing in the house, even though she knew Samantha was gone. The sheriff listened to her story, but he didn't know what to say. He didn't believe in dreams, but he did believe in signs. And something told him these dreams weren't just in her head. Josh, too, was haunted. At school, he sat at his desk, silent, his eyes darting to the windows as if expecting to see that smile again. One day, during recess, another boy asked him what really happened. Josh turned pale and whispered, "It's still calling me." The boy laughed it off, but Josh wasn't joking. At night, he heard his name drifting through the air, the same low, gurgling whisper that had chased him through the woods. When the sheriff heard this, his fear deepened. The creature wasn't finished. It wanted more. The townsfolk started digging into the past, desperate to understand what was happening. Old men at the diner remembered stories told by their fathers about people vanishing near the lake generations ago. Fishermen recalled catching glimpses of things in the water, shapes too big to be fish, too strange to name. Some claimed the lake was bottomless, connected to underground caves where things that should not exist were waiting. The library's oldest records mentioned the lake too. There were vague reports from the 1800s when settlers first built the town. Livestock disappeared. Children drowned without explanation, and once an entire family was found dead near the water, their faces twisted in terror, though their bodies bore no wounds. The deeper they dug, the more it seemed like Lake Dagger had always been cursed. And now, whatever lived in it had decided to rise again. Sheriff Lost couldn't ignore it any longer. He gathered a small group of deputies and brave townsfolk to watch the lake at night. They sat with lanterns and rifles, waiting. Hours passed. The cold crept into their bones. Some began to drift into uneasy sleep. Then it came. The water rippled, though no wind was blowing. A shape slowly broke the surface. Long arms, pale and dripping. A head, too large, with a smile that stretched too wide. Its eyes gleamed in the lantern light. The men froze. Some wanted to run, but the sheriff raised his rifle. The creature tilted its head as if amused. Then it sank back beneath the water, gone in an instant, leaving only silence behind. That was enough for most of the men. They swore never to return to the lake. But the sheriff stayed. He knew it was only a matter of time before the creature came again, and he feared that next time it wouldn't just watch. Nights turned into weeks. The curfew continued. Life in Daggerlin became a shadow of what it once was. Children no longer laughed in the streets. The air was thick with fear, and the lake waited patient, knowing the town could not resist forever. One stormy night, the sheriff got the call he dreaded. Another child was missing. This time he didn't wait for backup. He drove straight to the lake, rain pounding his windshield, lightning tearing the sky. He leapt from his car, calling the child's name, his voice nearly drowned by the storm, and then he saw it. In the water, the creature held the child in its claws. The little one was struggling, eyes wide with terror. The sheriff raised his gun and fired. The shot echoed across the lake. The creature let out a sound that was not human, not animal, but something in between. It dropped the child, who scrambled to the shore, gasping for air. But the sheriff wasn't so lucky. The creature lunged at him faster than his eyes could follow. Claws slashed, teeth flashed. He fought back with everything he had, but in that moment, he knew he was staring into the face of something that could never die. Something that would always return. And as lightning lit up the sky, the last thing the sheriff saw was that smile. That horrible, endless smile. The child survived, but the sheriff was gone. Daggerlin buried him as a hero. Yet the town knew the truth. The creature was still out there, lurking in the depths, waiting for its next chance. The lake was patient. It had been feeding for centuries, and it would never stop. So if you ever find yourself near a quiet little town in Ohio, and someone warns you not to go near the water, listen to them. Because sometimes the old stories are true. Sometimes the monsters never leave. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure you hit subscribe and leave a comment below. Tell me, would you dare walk along Lake Dagger after dark? Or would you stay as far away as possible? I'll be waiting to read your answers. And maybe, just maybe, the lake will be listening too.